Welcome back to API Days Singapore 2022. In this track, we're going to focus on connecting the next billion customers. So we've heard about open finance in Southeast Asia. This track is particularly about Southeast Asia and how we bring customers, people into the finance system. And I'm very pleased to welcome Cyrus Cruz, is the Singapore country head and MD for insurance and savings at UBX. Thanks very much, Cyrus, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, John. It's been a long time since we last spoke, 2 years ago at the physical event at API Days.
Yeah. So people may not have heard of UBX or may not be familiar with UBX, but have almost certainly heard of Union Bank of the Philippines, which is your parent organization. And I think both parent Union Bank has been very forward in digitizing, and UBX is the fintech arm of,
That's right.
Of Union Bank. So looking forward to hearing about the different initiatives that you're engaging in, how you're bringing people access to finance.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. And to your point, I think Union Bank is very much familiar in the Southeast Asia space. And of course, here and there, we've heard about UBX. But of course, for the next 15 minutes, I'd like to share with you further details on the good work that we've done here in the UBX. Before that, I'd like to greet everyone again. A good afternoon, and hope you are enjoying your afternoon lunch entertainment. And pleasure to present and join you in day 2 of API Days Forum. As John has mentioned, my name is Cyrus Cruz. I'm the Singapore country head for UBX. Prior to joining UBX, I was deputy head of the Singapore Innovation Lab of Tokyo Marine Group. During my stint, our team's remit was Southeast Asia and India. Now, in the past 4 years I was doing that, it was interesting to see how developing markets have progressed in terms of adoption of financial services. More importantly was in how corporates and startups alike acclimated and valued localization in their respective countries. This was also shared by Jacob earlier from IO Connect. More so in the focus on the VIP markets, as I'd like to call it. That will be Vietnam, Indonesia, and Philippines. Excited to share with you now the good work that we've done in UBX in the Philippine market. As John has mentioned, addressing the next billion customers, Philippines will be taking care of the first 11%, which is 110 million, and how our strong fundamentals in UBX will help us prepare for working with the rest of the region. Now, UBX is the FinTech Venture Studio and Venture Fund of Union Bank of the Philippines. We are a separate entity. We're not a lab that's tied into the bank. We're fully backed by the bank, but we're independent from the organization. Union Bank, of course, as John has mentioned, is one of the largest banks in the Philippines and the most digitized one. Quite notably, in the recent months, Union Bank was also granted one of the only 7 digital bank licenses in the Philippines with Union Digital, and publicly known in December, the acquisition of the consumer lines business of Citibank in the Philippines. Now for UBX, going back, we've set up our operations in Singapore in 2021 to help our open and embedded finance platforms connect with other enablers in the region and act as a bridge for the same enablers to enter the Philippine market. I'm excited to share with you how UBX has built and continuously improved our open finance ecosystem, helping drive financial inclusion. As it's been said in the past 2 days, the basic concept of open finance is the basic underlying premise of open banking is that data held by banks and financial service providers on their customers belong to their customers. Open finance refers to the sharing and leveraging of customer permission data amongst banks, other financial institutions, and third parties to build innovative financial solutions. At the same time, only 1 billion people in the world have access to fairly full-fledged banking without currency controls and international reach. 2 billion have no bank accounts at all, and the remaining 4.5 billion have limited access to financial services. For UBX, our vision is opportunity and access for all. Our mission is to include everyone. And on top of this, and I think this goes without saying, you've been hearing this coined term in the past 2 years. The pandemic has greatly affected individuals, businesses, and communities. Going digital in the Philippine market has become a necessity in order to survive and thrive under the new normal. Opportunity and access we needed technology and digitally enabled services has become apparent. We need to include everyone. We believe data, in particular consent driven data portability, can be an equalizer in terms of providing access and opportunity to enable previously excluded individuals, businesses, and communities. More so in the Philippines, of course, and broadly, financial inclusion means both access to financial products, like having a transaction account, and usage, for example, that account to make transfers and manage money rather than merely withdrawing funds once a month. I know this is a bit far off in the Singapore as a prevalence of pay now and access to this digital tools that we have, but in developing markets in the Philippines, this is much of a necessity. Now, by providing access to transaction data and enabling low-value payments, open banking can help foster innovation that targets the underbanked, offering legitimate alternatives to inefficient and ineffective financial practices which are present in developing markets like the Philippines. Now, further to this, I would like to share with you some examples on how open banking will concretely drive inclusion, particularly in the Philippines. Primarily building credit capacity by enabling data sharing and by using a digital payment mechanism, the underbanked population can begin to build a financial profile and transaction history. This can be shared with lenders to better understand actual risk profiles and fintechs to build better credit scores and improve access to affordable credit. Now, for SMEs, the perennially underserved financially, and I think this is not just on developing markets like the Philippines, Indonesia, but also I think even in developed markets, it's a very hot topic. Both businesses and financial transaction data can be used to provide access to much needed credit, with banking utility baked into the activities that matter, like ordering and storing raw goods and supporting a wide array of payment options preferred by their customers. We'll share our concrete examples later in the presentation. Now, improving sustaining financial health, imagine the bundling of a savings product and insurance into the remittances sent home by overseas Filipino workers. Now, for those familiar with the Philippine market, overseas remittances account to nearly about 9% of the country's gross domestic product. Imagine the vast opportunity in that space. And of course, further to that, banking the gig economy, not just access to digital accounts and wallets and digital payment instruments, gig economy platforms can embed and extend nano loans and microinsurance based on the workers' activities and on their platforms. As we've been seeing things pick up in markets like Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia as well. Now, the open finance framework allows for greater reach to more clients and partners, encourages the entry of more players, and increases the number of financial service offerings. Consumers will have the power to grant access to their financial data, allowing more parties to participate in the financial ecosystem, giving customers the ability and the right to reuse their financial data in new and innovative ways. Now, more charts for you. At about the same time as other jurisdictions started making moves in open banking and a few years ago, we noticed that digital platforms were acquiring customers at scale, and at a scale far surpassing that of traditional financial institutions. More and more, these platforms were facilitating the activities and experiences that truly matter to the individuals and businesses. This is readily reflected in the value ascribed to tech over banking in the markets. So we set out to build digital platforms for digitally and financially underserved communities not being addressed by the big tech. This is due to fractured structures and, of course, bad economics as well. While at the same time, aggregating and visualizing financial services for embedding into our platforms and the platforms of others. And in the following slides, as promised, I'm proud to share with you our very own products and services developed in-house at UBX that help enable and power our open and embedded finance platform. First off, our lending platform. We have registered over 50,000 SMEs and have processed 4 billion pesos worth of business loans with an open end-to-end digital lending experience that matches borrowers with 14 different lenders, with more lenders joining every day. UBX's lending platform is embedded into platforms merchants rely on, such as Lazada and Foodpanda. Next up is our Embeddable payments platform, which powers over 100,000 businesses, giving them access to a wide array of payment options through a single platform and API, including the largest aggregation of over-the-counter locations in the Philippines, making even cash payments digital for the merchant and digital to the last mile of customers. Our operating system for SMEs has allowed over 30,000 local merchants to get online and start selling in literally minutes, with digital payments and delivery integrated out of the box. UBX's open banking platform connects hundreds of financial institutions and thousands of community-based financial service providers to each other. The national retail payment system and the domestic remittance networks of the Philippines, supporting a multiplicity of digital banking services such as real-time payments, mobile ATM, insurance, and digital lending. If the interoperability between financial institutions on our platform for accelerating financial innovation sounds like open finance, as you've been hearing the past 2 days, you would be right. Now, putting this all together, for about close to 3 years that UBX has been in operations, we have innovated around an open finance framework. It is purposely designed to enable the customer's financial journey, enabling them with a low hurdle way to create a financial footprint, a channel for credit should they need it, and access to funds by establishing interoperability between hundreds of financial institutions and thousands of community-based financial service providers. Within the ecosystem of interrelated financial services, data subjects can move seamlessly from one service to another. Now, this aggregation of and interoperability between financial service providers behind a single API is really an example of market-driven open finance infrastructure, allowing platforms, fintechs, and merchants to leverage and innovate across our UBX services. Now, Todd from Brancas mentioned this the top of the morning earlier. In other jurisdictions, we've seen that open finance is occurring along two dimensions. In the US and China, mostly market pull up to now through solutions like Mint, Plaid, WeChat, and Alipay. In the UK and Europe, a heavy regulatory push with mandatory participation by the CMA9 and PSD2 respectively, with a commensurate market pull through digital challenger banks. Now, in some jurisdictions like Mexico, with the fintech law, we're seeing a regulatory push ahead of a market pull. Now, we see Europe as an open finance leader, and we see UBX's existing traction representing a market pull that highly complements a regulation-driven push by the local regulator with their open finance framework. Now, just like we connected hundreds of smaller financial institutions to NRPS through our open banking platform, we can leverage this to include the long tail of the financial services ecosystems in open finance. We allow smaller players to leapfrog access the scaling gap to get them to a technology level that can place them in some aspects at par even with the bigger players. We can include everyone, with smaller financial institutions, non-banks, other service providers, and most importantly, their customers, in the innovation promised by this open finance model. And as I wrap up into my last two slides, I'm also proud to announce Expanse. Expanse is UBX's open finance infrastructure. We open our very own infrastructure and an aggregation of financial services and providers to developers, the one that you've seen before. Now, not just consent-driven, but customer self-sovereignty at core, leveraging our blockchain-based APIscene technology. The ability to leverage a DeFi-friendly store of value through a regulatory-approved stablecoin called PHX, which we've been using for the past 2.5 years, and access to a decentralized real-time blockchain-based grid through our open banking network. Expands will not just connect developers to programmable financial services across hundreds of financial institutions in the Philippines and customers to innovation through control of their data. It will connect customers and traditional financial markets to the world's most innovative financial operating system and the future of banking, opening up the financial marketplace for the Philippines and soon the rest of Southeast Asia. This is the opportunity before us. UBX is responding to help the drive for open finance and financial inclusion. We are promoting the adoption of innovative solutions and services through our platforms. And now, of course, UBX expands. And as I wrap up, and thank you very much for joining me, we'd like to leave you with this thought. As John has mentioned, we aim to connect and serve the next billion customers. But what happens when you connect all 110 million Filipinos to a global economy without any barriers to access? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cyrus, for that picture. I think there are a number of elements I'd like to explore with that. And you obviously picked up on some of the points that earlier speakers touched on. And one of them was identity. And in Singapore, we have the SingPass National Digital Identity, which has been extended even further with the MyInfo service. In India, there is the Aadhaar digital identity, and also the digital stack that it allows for account aggregation and other things. So it's can you give us a picture of how digital identity is unfolding in the Philippines and how you came to realize that you yourselves have an edge in being able to provide that trusted identity where there isn't a government provided digital identity?
Yep. Thanks, John. I think the SingPass is a very good example on how we've seen this digital identity has been utilized on a practical level. Of course, in this talks, we talk about concepts, technology, and all the fun stuff. But in terms of real practical applicability, I think that's where the meat of the conversation is. Now, we travel 3 hours into the Philippine market. We have a population of 110 million people. And of course, infrastructure is not as same as Singapore. And even if it was, so we're tapping into 110 million people. What we're looking for at UBX is to leverage on our capabilities and products and services for us to be able to build that foundation for our customers to be able to build their self-sovereign identity. So for example, if one customer of ours provides us their passport details to open up a bank account and other material information, rather than providing the same information, let's say when they open a mobile phone line or maybe apply for other services, we'll be able to straight out API their information to those other products and services. So that'll be easier for them to facilitate those transactions. I think at the heart of it, we're going to be leveraging on our domain as a fintech and a banking and financial services provider, which inherently in developing markets, that where the fundamentals of trust are being built. Similar to SingPass in Singapore, wherein the fundamental trust is being accessed through a government through SingPass, and for the Philippine market, it's going to be the banking and financial services.
So, when you describe the APIscene identity, what makes that up? Because because the SingPass and Aadhaar, it tends to run on the OpenID Connect type of authentication scheme. What is the thing that is behind the APIscene identity?
We leverage on our own blockchain infrastructure for us to be able to seamlessly port over that information from one platform to another.
Right.
Again, we're still in the midst of developing this, and we'll be rolling that out this year.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of that obviously serves your own customers. Do you extend that beyond your own customers? What's the mechanism for that?
Yeah,
if
so
someone outside your customer base wants to participate? participate?
So the mission first is, of course, to be able to build that thoroughly within our own ecosystem. And then down the line, with Akin through Expanse, we'll be able to build that connectivity not only within our own ecosystem, but also cater to other partners outside of our ecosystem as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So actually, you had some other building blocks there
Yes.
that you were talking about. So there was Akin for identity, and then there was Bidit for wealth. What is making that part up?
Now, I think maybe I'll take two steps back in terms of our products and services, John, as you've mentioned. The ones that we have right now that are mature are in our lending capability, payments, and open banking. Now, these are our own products and services that we built in-house, and we've tied them up to our whole open finance network. So when we work with an enterprise partner, they will have access to our products and services. And then down the line, as I've mentioned, we will be opening up these other products and services, as you rightfully mentioned, the self-sovereign identity and our also asset tokenization, and also expands to be able to port over not only our products and services to our customers, but also external parties as well.
Mm-hmm. And you're currently offering a banking as a service
Correct.
Capability for several regional banks in the Philippines. So just step through.
Yeah. So
the reason you got to this point is because you've already established that for yourselves, and you realized you can externalize that as well.
That's right. So again, going back, so the flagship product was our open banking service. What we helped build was leverage on our own stablecoin called PHX, which is regulated by the Central Bank of the Philippines. Now, in the Philippines, as you could imagine, 7,000 islands and a lot of these rural banks, as you've mentioned. Facilitating money transfer costs more and also takes time. Now, by leveraging on our open banking network, we'll be able to seamlessly make those money transfers at a lower cost and a more efficient manner. So that's the baseline fundamental. Now, by providing that capability, we're also able to put additional products and services for these regional banks. Now, take a look at this. A small bank in the Philippines will not have access or may have limited access to their own dedicated IT team, or maybe even access to vendors that will be able to boost up their capabilities, such as bills payment or money transfers for that matter. So we help enable these regional banks build up further capabilities at a faster pace and at a lower cost for them as well.
Well, I guess that's the point. They're already engaging with those customers. There's not necessarily full range of banking services.
Correct.
It's challenging probably for you to go to each and every island and serve those customers. So I guess leveraging each other's strengths. You have the platform, and they have the contact with their customers, and you can bring those together to.
That's right. And what's also unique to UBX, and I think this goes back to what Jacob mentioned earlier when they're covering Indonesia, is the huge strength of like localization in the Southeast Asian market. Each of us have unique characteristics. I mean, of course, that's passé, and that's been said in a lot of these forums. But true to that is because we're backed by Union Bank of the Philippines, we are the only one who have a unique access to the last mile disbursement in the Philippine market, the last 5%, the ones that are not covered by the top 10 universal banks, or maybe not even being covered by the popular channels. So we also have access to those channels. And to your point, John, they leverage on our strength in being able to scale technology at a more cost-effective manner. We'll be able to leverage on their local networks for us to be able to facilitate and provide banking and financial services to their customers. And to your point, there's only the beginning in terms of like providing money transfers and bills payments and other financial services. Down the line, the end vision is to be able to provide the self-sovereign identity capability for these individuals and give them access not only to our products and services, but also to the platforms of others outside our ecosystem.
Great. That's some great insights there into how you can actually bring access to financial services to more people while doing it cost effectively. And the future, where are you going to take this platform? Is it just the Philippines, or are you going beyond the Philippines?
So that's a Good lead-in question, Sean. Thanks. So that was the reason why we set up the Singapore office as well about 10 months ago. Uh, we would like to, number one, we'd like to act as a bridge for startups and corporates who would like to enter the Philippine market. Now, we're talking about the next billion customers. And of course, my talk has been centered around Philippines and Southeast Asia. But how I view Philippine market is not only a proxy to the Southeast Asia market and a more conducive alternative to the likes of, for example, Indonesia. We have sizable population at 110 million compared to 200 million of Indonesia. But again, there's a lot to be done in the Philippine market. This vast opportunity. We are very much culturally, we're very much Western Asian, a good mixed bag of that. So we're not only a proxy to the Southeast Asia market, but also we're a proxy to similar developing markets outside of Southeast Asia. Of course, there's a lot of buzz around the similar open finance infrastructure in Latin America and also South Africa, for that matter. So, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, that's the agenda that we have. Bridge this out to Southeast Asia and also eventually in similar developing markets. In fact, John, we have a very small and humble collaboration right now that came out of this quite recently. We're working with a financial literacy app for women startup that's based out of Singapore, but recently launched in the Philippines and Nigeria. So what they do is they work with the likes of United Nations, Catholic Relief Services, to be able to provide these financial programs to people from these developing markets such as the Philippines and Nigeria. Now, what we help enable them was provide the disbursement facility for the Philippine market. And for a very good coincidence, we were both mission aligned to be able to tap in and educate the market in terms of financial services. So that's one of the initiatives that we're working with that's stemmed out of this setup that we have in the Singapore office. Further to that, onto the more like the back end part as well. Obviously, I mean, as much as we like to share about the good work that we've done at UBX and of course in the Philippines, the Union Bank of the Philippines, we are also very cognizant that there are other markets that are more mature than us in terms of building capabilities with open finance. And of course, Singapore being the conducive regional hub for Asia of anything and everything, startup, insurtech, and fintech as well, we would also like to identify the players in the market that are here and we'll be able to help bring them back to the Philippine market. Of course, open finance is one. Then, of course, down the line, we'll be looking at decentralized finance models as well. So it's two ways, us going out the rest of Southeast Asia, and of course, down the line, the other developing markets as well in the globe. But of course, also identifying potential partners for us to bring back to the Philippines and boost up our capability locally.
Great. That's exactly what APIs do. Actually, it's not just a one-way communication; is two-way. So thanks very much for sharing that, those insights and that journey that UBX and Union Bank are going down to help us to connect the next billion customers. Thanks very much, Cyrus.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.